would have gone for 12 months, but now over 18 months.
Yeah, it's definitely not more money. So it's more time, but not, it creates that budgeting issue, and that's why it becomes now a personal finance issue as well, even more so, and it's becoming a huge topic of conversation with a lot of my clients.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we are here today doing this Facebook Live, this YouTube Live, hoping that as many people can tune into this as possible and bring us your questions. We are talking about parental leave, and especially because we have more details on these new rules around parental leave guidelines, where you'll be able to apply to have 18 months in parental leave rather than 12. But over those 18 months, you're still going to be stretching the same amount of money from your EI rather than over the 12. So it's not that you're going to get more money over that time. So it brings up all these budgeting issues. And one other thing to mention, it's not everyone that will be able to have this 18 months as an option so far.
Right.
It's just federally regulated sectors, federally, easy for me to say today, federally regulated employees. So, we're talking about this now for this small group, but, it's a big conversation for people, parental leave, and how do you budget for it?
Yeah.
So, where you said that some of your clients are coming to you and talking to you about parental leave, like what is the big question that people have when it comes to making it work?
Yeah, and so whether you're part of this potential new extended leave or not, it's one of the number one questions that I get, because I'm working with families all the time, and there's this fear about like what happens during that parental leave, that maternity leave year. So the questions that I most often get are, how do we budget for it? Which brings up top up, and are you topped up? Are you self-employed? All of those questions, and like how do we survive? And so knowing what's coming in and making a budget for it, and maybe forecasting ahead, is something that's really important for anyone who is pregnant or thinking about having kids. Even if tomorrow is your due date, there's still time.
There's still time. And I should mention to you why we're talking to this person here. This is Shannon Lee Simmons, who I know well because we've talked to her whenever we have these sorts of personal finance issues that come up that we want some answers to. But Shannon Lee Simmons is the founder of the New School of Finance. So she does a lot of financial planning, is a certified financial planner. So you are so qualified to be talking about this, but also for one other reason, that you are a new parent as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
So you have gone through all of this personally and also professionally.
Yeah, and because I own my own business, I didn't even get a mat leave. So there you go. So I can attest to saving up for it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, we already have some questions coming in, so we'll get started right away. Commander Spock on YouTube says, my wife and I are waiting because the home we own isn't large enough, and although we have no debt and $50,000 in savings, children are expensive, and we know we need to have more to offer. So I guess just that, when are you ready?
Okay, so the number one thing that I say to any client is that there isn't a really perfect financial time, because I think we would all be waiting forever and there would never be babies born, because they're always going to be expensive and they're always going to be something that strains the budget. But if you have $100,000 of consumer debt, maybe you want to start piling down on that a little bit. The reason is that here are the big things that's going to come and spike your budget. I call it baby proofing your finances. So you're going to want to have a little emergency cushion of about $3,000 to $5,000 saved up before you jump ship. And this is for things like the crib, the car seat.
Right.
There's gifts and stuff that happen that can help to offset that, but at the end of the day, the baby startup costs they're expensive and they sneak up on you, even if you try so hard to be a parent who doesn't do all the things. Most of my clients are like, no, and then all of a sudden there's something that came up and they had to buy it. So a little bit of a cushion. And the second thing is to look at like what the budget is while somebody's on maternity leave or paternity leave. So just to break that down, it can last for 12 months. That's how much money you get, whether it's extended to 18 months or not. You're still getting the same amount of money as you said. And so if you have a partner who's still working, taking their income and then what you're going to get on EI, and then figuring out what the shortfall is. If you're kind of used to living off of a certain amount of money, you're going to be in a deficit. So what is that deficit? And if it's going to affect your ability to pay mortgage, bills, debt, groceries, like real tight living, then you're going to need to save up a bunch of money. If it's just a reduction in some of the extra fills in life, or maybe your savings or something like that, then you don't have to save up as much because you can cruise through on the lower income. So it really has to do with that forecasting piece and making sure that you have enough to cover the bare bones minimum of your life.
We're talking about parental leave today. It's a hot topic this week as we, hear more about the changes to parental leave for federally regulated employees so far. But we want you to bring your questions to us in terms of, how do you budget? How do you make that work if you were to be able to extend from 12 to 18 months? Or just whatever, if you are self-employed and you're trying to make parental leave work, bring us your questions. Shannon Lee Simmons is a great person to ask. So we have another question coming in from a YouTube viewer. They're just, that's just a comment. I've got 4 kids and I'm 33. We're doing fine.
Good for you.
Good for you.
Yeah.
If you have some tips, send them our way too. If you've figured out ways that you can make it work, send those too so we can share them with everybody. Drace asks, what costs can you expect to have in the first 3 months of having a child? Are there fees associated with giving birth? Now, this particular viewer is in Quebec, so that does sometimes complicate things because not all of our rules apply across the country. But I don't know if you can speak
maybe not specifically to Quebec, but overall there isn't, other than Quebec specifically, there aren't fees when you have a kid. In fact, the one thing that you want to do to help with the budget is make sure that your taxes are up to date and make sure that you apply for all of the potential government subsidies that happen once you have a kid. So that's anything from like the child tax benefit, which comes through, and that's an income tested tax credit. So the lower income that family household, the more money that you get, and it's tax-free from the government. So doing your taxes, keeping up all of that information up to date with the government when your kid is born, hopefully you qualify for some things, and then the money can start coming in, which would be very nice to offset it. The major costs that I would say are those outlays of getting ready for the baby, like we had just talked about, and also your toiletries are going to go up. There's like diapers and wipes now, and if you're using formula, that's expensive too. And so making sure that you've budgeted in a few $100s a month for like the cost of a new baby is something that I would say is really important. But I tell a lot of my clients, like, you're probably not going to be going out as much or doing as much. So, there might be a little slack in the budget for things that you used to spend money on that now are no longer, they're kind of moot for your year off.
Right, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And you know what, Danny Anderson is just asking a question right along these lines saying, how much a month can I expect to spend per kid? No help, just me. So I guess they're on their own, but yes.
Daycare.
Yeah.
So I like to think of maternity leave and parental leave as kind of like training for the daycare years, because if you can survive the year or 18 months, potentially, without taking on debt and on that lower budget, then you can pretty much survive the daycare years that are going to follow afterwards if you have both parents going back to the workforce, or you're getting ready to have living off of one income, right? So one of those two things are going to happen. So that's why it's a really good time to pull together as a family and make like a budget so you can train yourself. And I would say, like, what I usually test when I'm baby-proofing someone's finances, so to speak, is like, I usually toss in, let's say they want to buy a house and all these things, about $1,000 a month. Everyone's going to freak out when I say that, but just hear me out. To kind of like, are you okay if there's a kid here? You know what I mean? And the reason I say 1,000 is because in the first year, it's not going to be that at all. Like I said, it's a few $100s for your toiletries. Then the daycare years, it could be much higher than that, up to $2,000 a month. So on the other end. And then once they're out of the daycare years, it might be piano lessons or swimming or something, and extra groceries and pants. So on average, you're kind of looking at about $12,000 a year on average to raise a typical child, and that's been backed up with like stats as well. So if you're thinking about buying a house and everything, kind of slapping an extra $1,000 a month there in spending, and then if it still works out, then you can afford it. But in that first initial year, no, it's not going to be $1,000 a month. Wait for the daycare years for that.
I know that's a pretty good, just a number to have in your mind.
On average, on average.
Okay, we're baby-proofing your finances today. So send us your questions when it comes to, budgeting for having a kid, budgeting your time, your finances in the parental leave years. Send in your questions. I know we have Facebook viewers on the money, on our CBC Facebook page, and also on YouTube. So send them all in. We're checking all of those. We have a YouTube viewer commenting saying, cost of living in Canada is very high. Taxes and fees are extremely high, at least in Ottawa, which is where this YouTube viewer is.
Yep.
And they say that they just can't afford more kids. So I guess some people coming to that conclusion that perhaps it's just too much.
Yeah, and I hate when that happens, but I do agree that I hear that comment often.
Yeah.
It seems to be, I see less and less families having three or more kids, more one or two. If they are looking at their finances and thinking, you know, because once we go over 2 kids, well, now we need a bigger car, bigger house, all the things.
Yeah.
You can't, or you need 2 cars or something because
maybe
there's more people.
hand-me-downs though.
That's it, right?
No, but I get that.
So
yeah.
it does go up, but well, you don't need more space, but it's definitely something that I hear a lot of is that, you know, our apartment is only a 2-bedroom, and if we have a 3rd kid, we don't, like, 3 people to 1 room doesn't work anymore, right? For them. So there are multiple ways, and what I would say is it's all about what's important to you, and there are many ways that you can make things work. So if it doesn't feel affordable for your lifestyle, then that's great, and it might be super affordable for somebody else.
So Shannon Lee Simmons is the founder of the New School of Finance. So it's a financial planning firm, and she also is a certified financial planner. So she's the person you want to ask all of your questions when it comes to budgeting for this sort of stuff. So we do have more questions coming in. I see one from Jill and one from Jeff. Lisa, so we'll go to Jill first. So Jill Landry is asking, I am a stay-at-home mom. My husband took the 35 weeks, January to September 2017. When we decided to have the baby, we sat down to determine how much time we could afford. Mm-hmm. We had to save a lot of money, but the biggest thing is that you need to be proactive. Otherwise, you will be stuck. What suggestions would you give for someone who has a surprise pregnancy?
Right. So first of all, what I love about what you just said Jill, is that you swapped off the parental leave, and that is a very good budgeting thing for a lot of families to give people different time at home, but also strategically, potentially from the financial point of view, if one parent is the higher breadwinner, then you can throw them back in the workforce and then trade off. And so that sometimes can help the overall financial picture and make it more affordable. What I would say, the tips for someone who has a surprise pregnancy is, I mean, they don't really change. It's do what you can, if you can. Right? So, I mean, if you are surprised I'm pregnant, you have 9 months now and the clock is ticking. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I would say, if you're self-employed, that is a bit of an issue because you have to have paid into special EI benefits for at least 12 months before. Right. So if you're self-employed, and that's if you're a sole proprietor. If you're incorporated, like me, there's no option anyways, so you just don't even get to apply. Okay. But so if you're a surprise pregnancy, the most important thing to do is just look at the budget right now, or like look at your finances right now. Calculate the hole. If there isn't a hole, then you don't have to stress, right? So what's that hole in your budget going to be that is a non-negotiable, like that? Can you afford to pay for your bills, groceries, basic living, and like diapers and wipes? Like that's the big thing that you need to make sure that you can get through. If you can pay for that stuff, then okay, we're fine, we're safe. We now just need to save for those kind of baby upstart costs. So figuring out those, and then working backwards from there and trying to look at the finances and saying, what can I do right now? Yeah. Don't get worried if you're sitting there saying like, well, I'm already tight. I don't really know how I'm going to make this work. My advice is that's okay. You'll survive. Yeah. You'll survive. People have done it for thousands of years, right? So we're not unique in that sense. Yeah. And it is scary and it's intimidating, and if you can be proactive about it, you're ahead of the game. But if you just are not there, you're still going to be okay. I tell most families, just tread water. If you can just not go into debt, you're winning. That's it.
And keep smiling.
Just keep at it. If you can just keep swimming, then you're doing your job. That's all you need to do.
So we are talking about parental leave, about budgeting for that. We did get more information about these new parental leave rules so that federally regulated employees are able to extend their parental leave to 18 months instead of 12 months. However, the amount of money that they would have gotten over that 12 months is now just going to be stretched to the 18 if they do choose to do that. Yes. So we're talking about, how do you make that affordable for a family, and how do you make all of this work? So I see lots of questions coming in, which is great. Please send them our way. Some of these are a little specific, so I'm not sure if we'll have the answers to them, but throw them anyway.
Give it a shot.
So Jeff Lisa RS asks, can you take 18 months of maternity leave, but take the payments over 12 months?
The actual logistics of it.
Yeah.
I'm not actually sure about how the program is going to roll out that way, but what you could do from a budgeting point of view, let's say that you can't stretch it out over 18 months. I would have like a high interest rate savings account or something where in the 12 months where it's coming in full throttle, you kind of stash it there, and then you pay into the personal family checking account or into your checking account the amount that would actually be budgeted over that 18-month period. And then you kind of stretch it out yourself and like create yourself a little bit of a paycheck that lasts for 18 months.
Yeah. But we don't know for sure exactly
I don't know what the
how
government's how they're gonna pay it out.
And this is a bit of a specific one, but from Madalena, and they're asking, can foster parents apply for such benefits? I know we've talked about that, this could be whether you're having a child yourself or whether you're adopting a child, but I'm not entirely sure if foster parents would be a different category.
I'm not sure, no. That would be something to check with Service Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that, Madalena. But okay, we do have one more from Jeff Lisa as well, saying if I work part-time in those 6 months without pay, do I have to pay back my EI?
This is a great question. Okay, so earning money well on EI is something that is important to understand the rules, and they are very specific and they could change. But you are allowed to earn some money while you're on EI, and yes, your benefits would get clawed back a little bit. The default rule is that you're allowed to earn some money, and then your EI is claimed back you get 50% of it for every dollar that you've earned. So why I'm saying that is that a lot of people think if you earn any money, you have everything. You're not allowed to collect EI and you have to pay it all back, and there's interest and penalties. That's not necessarily the case. You're supposed to report your weekly earnings, and so you're actually allowed to collect EI and work to some degree at the same time. And so if you work without pay, then your weekly earnings would be nothing during that time, but you're working over that specific period of time, so you might be breaking the rules. I would be very careful. It depends on the structure and the nature of how you work. But there is a new pilot program as well that's also, they're trying it out to allow people to work more flexibly so that EI, while you're working, it's not just like, nope, no work at all, that's it. So I would look on the Service Canada website to see what the two options are and the new pilot program, which is out there. Technically, if you're not working during the time that you're on EI, then you wouldn't have any loss of benefits. And then if you start up work again after your benefits, you don't have to pay it back retroactively. But if you are working while you're collecting EI, you're supposed to be declaring what you're earning. Okay. Or else you will have to pay it back.
Right, okay. We are talking about parental leave and about budgeting for being a parent. And so send us your questions. And I do want to just tell you that we have limited time today because Shannon is also a new parent and needs to run and take care of her 6-month-old child. So we're all figuring this stuff out as we go.
Fake it till you make it.
So please send us your questions so we can try to get as many in as possible. We have another one from Drace, and Drace is asking, what is the most expensive, unexpected expense that can surprise us? Are there some things that come up?
Yeah, so one of the things that some of my clients have reported back over the years that I've seen that was unexpected, this especially is for people who are self-employed, not necessarily employees, but it could affect employees in the workplace as well. Sick babies get sick. And so while we have free healthcare here, missed work is something that is a huge problem.
Right.
And babysitters for sick days, if you can't necessarily come home and that last minute kind of leaving work, and if you're self-employed, canceling appointments for the day or something like that. Yeah. So I would say that it's those unexpected emergencies, and also vehicles become something that maybe carless families never thought that they would do, or they didn't want one, and then all of a sudden they feel like they need a vehicle, and that's a huge, massive expense.
Right.
And how far you might push your vehicle till the bitter end before, I find a lot of parents, especially new parents, maybe won't take the same safety risks as they might have before now that they have a kid in the car, right? So they're that kind of, I guess you could see that coming, but I find it one of the things that when I'm looking at people's finances, those tend to be the ones that people are like, it just happened. Right? It's just it happened. We didn't expect to do it, but then we were sitting there and the brakes were bad, and then all of a sudden it was a $2,500 repair. Yeah. So it's those emergency things that still crop up, only now it's kind of like emergencies on steroids. right?
Right.
So it's like everything you cared about as a single family now added on top of that stress.
Yeah, and now you've got a little one that's going in that vehicle.
Oh,
that
the
you wanna make
responsibility.
Sure, it's just coming down, I know for sure. We have a YouTube viewer saying a comment here. I was forced to extend my mat leave to 4 years. Employer forced me to quit, would not accommodate daycare hours.
Yes.
I blew through $10,000 in savings and cashed in $3,000 in RRSPs over that period. I bet that isn't.
No, that's so
uncommon.
common. No, I'm pretty sure that's a lot of the experience out there. And I think that's part of why, love it or hate it, I think that's the part of why this extended for 18 months is happening to help with the daycare situation, because care is hard to get and it's expensive.
Right.
And so you could look at it like, okay, so it's the same amount of money and then you go back to work. Well, if both partners earn a lot of money, well then that all works out. But if you have this time on mat leave and then you go back to work and one partner doesn't make that much money, but now you have to pay for full-time care, sometimes it feels like you're working for free, right? Just to pay for daycare.
And sometimes it's hard. I've heard stories about people not being able to get a daycare that will take that age of a child at that time.
That's my problem right now.
That's your problem.
Yep. So the age. So all of this is to try to get it to a place where you can get more care options, which usually happens typically at 18 months. But it's a strain in those 18 months financially, or it might be for the families that are doing it. So to that comment, don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up. It is something that happens. Care is very expensive. The cost of living continues to rise. Housing is expensive. Kids are expensive. There is no two ways about it. And so the best advice that I could give you is just like, don't lose hope. There's probably still 15 to 25 years that you have until retirement, and that's the next big hurdle. So you have some time to pay back what happened and then make up for it on the other way. Eventually, kids will be out of daycare and into school programs that are free still. So this is great.
And those really do seem to be some of the most expensive years. We've done all of these childcare cost stories.
It's wild.
Just seeing the costs rising, especially in provinces like Ontario. And we do have a comment from Wendy Lopez saying, I live in Toronto and having kids in this city that is expensive. You have to be very creative. We had a baby in May and we saved for 1 year for this baby. When I go back to work, I will work days and he will work nights. I'm guessing that's your partner, not necessarily the baby. And we live in a condo and we turn the den into the baby's room.
Great.
Cloth diapers, etc. helps. So thank you for those tips, Wendy, as to how you did it. But
that's wonderful.
Yeah, getting creative.
I think that's it. We're all just having to get creative. And so and I think that maybe what sometimes when you're planning things out, maybe you thought they'd look one way and they look a different way, but celebrating that, and because you're actually being so financially responsible, which actually feels better than maybe extending and doing things that are so far without of your means, so to speak, right? Just to make room for the baby. So, and that kind of relates back to what we had chatted about before. There's always a way.
Yeah.
So like there's always a way. It just might look differently than what you had initially thought. And just as long as you can tread water during those really expensive years, that's basically your MO. So like, screw retirement planning for a bit. Like it's okay. It's all there's time, and then just like figure out a way that you can make it work for you and your family during those years, so that you just try not to go into debt. And if you do end up going into debt, it happens, and there's still time.
We are talking about parental leave today because this week we got more information about this extension of the parental leave. And it's just so far for federally regulated employees, but instead of 12 months, it's 18 months that you'd be able to apply for. That would be the option. But the EI would be stretched over the 18 months, the same that you would get for the 12. So, there's criticism already about, who's going to be able to afford doing that. But that's what we're trying to answer today in terms of how you can make it work and what perhaps the benefits of it would be for your family. Send your comments and questions in. I know we have Facebook viewers and YouTube viewers. We've already been getting lots, so we've got a few minutes left. So send your comments in so that we can get to them. We have one from Marge Rays, and they're asking, my employer was giving me an option to work and hire a nanny or just resign. Is that legal?
I'm not sure about the legality of that.
That's a tough one.
I would talk to an employment lawyer. That sounds a little sketchy. So I don't know if they can make you give you that ultimatum.
Yeah, that's a situation. Yeah, so we're probably not the person for that question, but send in your questions about in terms of budgeting and that sort of thing, and we can try to get to those. But that's also interesting to see all the positions that people. Situations that people come up against.
And I do want to comment a little bit. So one of the things that and this is anecdotally, I cannot speak to the greater audience, but this is what I've seen in my practice. And I've been practicing now for 7 years on my own and 10 years in total. And I've seen this a lot on the other side of kids. So a lot of times when, to that point, work and hire out, but it feels like you're working for free. I hear that all the time, right? But what I've noticed is that on the other end of the daycare years, it can be really hard for one parent who took time off to get back into the workplace. For the rest of that trajectory, when they're supposed to be retirement planning and retirement savings and all that kind of stuff, when the kids are growing and grown up and they're at school and they don't need full-time care anymore. And so the only thing that I would say to consider the type of work that you do, the industry that you're in, and if there's availability for part-time. So if there's a way that over those years of daycare that you can get creative and maybe do part-time care and work for the other ones just to keep your foot in the workforce, I would strongly suggest anecdotally from what I've seen to do that, just so that once the daycare years are done, you can still have that full earning potential instead of missing out on those years that you were out of the workforce.
So even if it's expensive in the short term, it may be worth it financially.
Depending on the type of work in the industry that you're in. Sometimes it makes no sense at all because there isn't a gain from staying in or not, and you can bounce in and out, especially if you're unionized. But sometimes in a specific type of industry, 4 years of depreciating skill set is going to hurt you on the other side, and you might not be able to get that same employment opportunities.
Right. Just to introduce Shannon again. So Shannon Lee Simmons is the founder of the New School of Finance. She's a financial planner and also a personal finance expert that we love turning to on topics like these and many, many others. But we do have some more comments and questions coming in, and I want to squeeze as many in as we can, so keep sending them. But Julie McKenzie comments, sometimes it's about the life you want to lead with children. It depends what your expectations are for the lifestyle you want to have. Pardon me, and keeping up with the Joneses.
Absolutely.
That's the pressure.
And that's something that we've touched on a few times in this chat already, is like, it may not look like what you thought, aka keeping up with the Joneses. It is about your expectations. That's why I keep saying it can work no matter what. You just need to change what perspective it is to make it work, because it might just look differently. And the more creative you get, the more you're going to appreciate that it's actually working. You're making it work for you in whatever financial hand you were dealt, right? So I completely agree with that. And I think that those lifestyle expectations is at the core of so many financial issues, and not just having kids.
And we do have a question coming just from Halea, and so asking jobs protected for 18 months then. So this extension from the 12 months to 18 months. If you are in a federally regulated job or sector, then yes, the job would be protected for 18 months. But that only so far would be applying to a very small part of the population. It depends if provinces decide to sign on and take part in this. So for now, if you're in, the sectors would be sort of like banking, telecom, transportation, public service, and if you're in one of those sectors, then you would be looking at having your job protected for those 18 months if you chose to do that. And I think maybe we'll just end on Elf saying here, I have more kids so that they will pay for my retirement.
That's amazing.
So one financial plan. They got to be on board with it, though.
Right? Diversifying your assets. Right. The more kids, the less risk, right? And so, you know what? Actually, in a funny way, some of my clients who are now dealing with aging parents, and that is a thing that is something, right? So
support systems,
Right, but it really does come down to, like our one viewer said, the lifestyle that you want. Don't lose hope. You just might have to change the way that looks for you, but there's always a way to make it work, and it just may look different than what you thought.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for joining us today. Thank you for sending us your questions and your comments. If you didn't catch all of the great tips that Shannon had to offer, go back and re-listen to this once we've got it posted. So thank you for tuning in, and do check CBC.ca. We have a lot of articles that are going up looking at this parental leave, the changes to it, so you can get even more details there and learn more. But for now, we will sign off, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much,
Thank
Shannon,
you.
for doing this. And now you can get back to your busy life.
Part-time.
Yeah, no, that's great.
It's hard, but it's
Yeah.
like it's worth it at the same time because
Yeah.
that's how we made it work, right? So
Yeah.
it's like you just do what you can.
Yeah, I'm glad you could squeeze those in, and especially in basically short-term notice with news. You gotta do what you can. But yeah, thank you for doing that.
It's really convenient that my husband works across the street.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps. That definitely helps. And actually, one of our producers who just got back from maternity leave was like, "Bring